for children in foster care. So therefore, you get to the end of the year and a Child Protective Services Department in some state or in a county there in the state may not have taken as many children as they need to, and they have a
mid-afternoon, I guess.
Their formula or their bonus increases on the wall, and it tells exactly how many more children they need by the end of the year.
Back on the house side of the Capitol.
Shop at a car dealership. They got the
We're blasting out Alex Jones across the mall.
Right. That's exactly right.
I'm going to flip around here.
There was this auto mechanic and his young wife, and she had tested positive 3 years before. They don't tell you when you go to the hospital, they're testing your blood. They know she's got marijuana in her. No judge, no jury, no second test, no process. They come and take the blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby. Well, this is 3 years later, and so they contacted my show, and they said, we're pregnant, we're going back in the hospital. We just want to make sure they don't try to take them. They call. I leave the radio that day. I drive down.
Again, they still have the main area, the middle
I say no.
west lawn all blocked off. It's fenced off.
The camera doesn't pick it up very well.
They say to regrow the grass as usual. I think it's BS because they used to let us down there for years. Anyway, they're just paranoid around here since 9/11. In fact, they used to be able to go up on the steps. A guy told me. One of the Capitol Police told me you used to be able to go up on the steps up there.
Have you ever seen that, Senator?
Well, I haven't exactly seen that. I do know that they.
But he said since 9/11 they blocked those off. So we're basically living in a police state.
Social workers oftentimes, very often, are guilty of fraud, and they do withhold the evidence, and they fabricate the evidence, and their whole goal is to terminate the parental right of the parents, and parents are just left at the mercy, and all of this in the best interest of the child. Those words, in the best interest of the child, have been redefined. It's not in the best interest of the child. The bottom line is taking the children for money.
And the law was written, for those that don't know, I'd like you to speak to this, because I know you're an expert on it, so you can speak to it. It was written to where, we're supposed to keep the family together and give it to grandparents or the other spouse. Grandparents don't like how the parents are operating. They advertise on TV to tattle. The grandparents go and tattle, and then they don't get the children 9 times out of 10.
Yes. There are lots of grandparents that cannot get their grandchildren, even when it would be best if the say the parents are on drugs. Someone does need to have access to those children, but oftentimes the grandparents are turned down. Now there is a policy that you're supposed to secure a relative immediately for those parents, but oftentimes that relative is never sought out. The grandparents are never given the children. And a stranger then comes in and takes over the lives of those children. And there is absolutely no financial resource or no real drive to unite the family back together or to keep them together or to provide any effective care for the family. That is completely gone. Now it's destroying the family.
Well, right out of high school, I learned about this because for a summer I worked for a large carpet cleaning place. And we would go to these houses, and we might go to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 houses a day sometimes, and I'd say, what is this? And it'd be usually a middle-class house, 5-bedroom, parts of it be nice, there'd be rooms locked, there'd be kids walking around, in shorts with their shirts off, ages 3 to 10, there'd be marijuana smoke, there'd be some fat. It always looked the same, some pervert-looking adult, and then because you'd be in a 2-man team, and I was with the older guy who knew about it. He goes, "Oh, this is some foster parent house." I'm not attacking all foster parents, folks, but I saw what it is. It's lazy potheads or alcoholics that get 4 or 5 kids, and that's their business. Is they warehouse them, and they're always getting caught killing them or locking them up or giving them 1 hot dog a day, bread and water, because they want all that money for their drug habit. And that's why I've seen statistics of foster parents being 5 times more likely to abuse children than any other group.
You're exactly right. The children are much more likely to be abused in foster care than at home with their own parents. The beginning of this journey for me began with a grandmother who was trying to get her 2 granddaughters in one of the counties in my district. The Child Protective Services had removed the 2 little girls from their mother, who was very young, and they based it on the fact that there was an unopened can of beer in the front of her car. They took these 2 little girls over to an adjoining county, put them in foster home over there where they had 18 children, all kinds of little rooms downstairs in the lower level of this home. And one of the caseworkers in that county was a pedophile who lived in that home and regularly sexually molested the children who were in the foster care. When this came up in court, I went to court with this grandmother and sat in the back of the court. And we had a good attorney that day who pulled the walls down, who cross-examined one of the older children in this foster home, and she admitted that there was an inappropriate relationship between the foster mother and the caseworker. And then it got a little worse, and then the juvenile court judge got all nervous and said, "Counsel, meet me in my chambers," and they went out and stayed 5 minutes and came back, and our attorney just looked at us and out loud said, "It's nothing but legal kidnapping." That's all it is, legal kidnapping. But let me tell you what happened.
Did they get the child back?
We pressed, it's called DFACS in Georgia, and we pressed and pressed and pressed. The judge said those children will be removed within a week. Well, a week was gone, 10 days was gone, the children were still there. We kept leaning on them to get those children out of there. And out of the blue, someone called this grandmother in Florida to tell her that they were bringing the children from Georgia to the state line, would she drive up to pick them up? She, of course, said she would be there. She got the children. They didn't have any clothes. One was not wearing shoes. She took them home, and within 3 days, that juvenile court judge drew up a new order, and she gave the 2 little girls to their father, who lived on the West Coast, who had never been involved in their lives, and who was involved in adult entertainment. I pulled his business up on the internet. Pornographic. Awful.
That's why they gave it to him. And in fact, you come to the next point, Senator.
Within 3 days, that father was knocking on the door of that grandmother and took those 2 little girls screaming and crying to the West Coast.
Well, it's better than that in that death pit down there in that house with all those little kids. Now,
right.
Now, for those who don't know, I found out about this because I walked into these pits, and I probably only saw that summer 7 or 8 of them, but I mean they were all the same.
That's horrible.
And literally they're hell pits. And I'm, Senator, you notice everything I've told you, you've seen the same thing, and we've had the same similar experience fighting this. And I just do it a little bit of the time. Frankly, I psychologically shy away from it because it's so,
God damn it.
well, it just makes me feel,
take its toll on you.
it makes me feel very aggressive. It makes me want to, but the point is that when it comes right down to it, how many Homeland Security deputy directors of states have been caught with little kids? How many senators and congressmen, with the pages, and how many DHS officials, that want to stop child abuse, it turns out, are pedophiles? When you get down to it, you got a couple groups. You got parents you've got children who are abused, who think that all parents are abusive and they're gonna punish the family. Because I went to college with some people that were going to be social workers, and you'd be out drinking beer, and the girl would say, I just can't wait to take kids from these bad parents because I was abused. So there's those mentally ill people. Then there's pedophiles who want access to kids, and then there's scumbags that just want money. And I gotta say, that's basically what makes up CPS in my experience. And I think, from what I've seen, I'd probably say 30% of them are pedophiles. And I mean, and the problem is this crime rate, this crime spree is growing. So can you comment on that? And where is this going? How do we stop it?
Well, I would say that there are definitely pedophiles in the system. There's no question about that, because we know where there's children, there are pedophiles. they're in schools and they're in churches and they're everywhere where they can get their hands on children. So we know that that's true. And it's got to be brought to an end. It's got to be completely exposed for what it is. And in my opinion, it needs to completely be dissolved. I don't see any good left in Child Protective Services. As far as picking up a child that's being totally abused, the police could do that just as well as Child Protective Services.
And then you have due process. And exactly. Well, take Texas. Did you hear about the Texas Youth Commission?
I don't know.
I mean, there's so many crimes. I'm not knocking you if you haven't.
You're not talking about all those children in Texas that were picked up at one time.
No, that was with that Mormon sect.
Right.
Did you hear about how the child jails and the child facilities had organized pornographic rings and like big rape parties for the children, and the state police found out about it and then weren't allowed to stop it. And now they forced the director out because
This is the House side of the U.S. Capitol.
I have heard about that in other states, but I have not heard about what happened in Texas.
In case you hadn't heard this morning, they had me set up on the other side, the Senate side. I got all set up.
people wouldn't even believe. You can read it in mainstream news. Now they use that to pass a law for more money for the agencies.
I got all set up, ready to go. Turned on my generator over there because I told the guy, they told me this morning I couldn't go in the middle out there behind me where we usually go. Because they've got the fences up, they say it's for the grass, right? So they sent me on the other side, the Senate. I told the guy, well, it's okay, and the powers are out in the middle, so that's why it's best to get in there. But now they tell me they got power here on this side, so they didn't tell me that this morning. So this is the second time I've set up today. It was like 2:30 when I finally got set up here again. So I've had a real workout today. Had a lot of people look at these posters.
And of course, parents, the poorer the families are, those are the ones who are targeted because they don't have the wherewithal to fight the system or hire an attorney. And they are just caught up in it, and many of them are because their children So it is just heartbreaking as to what is going on and what we've got to do in order to bring this to an end.
You ever heard about what the former head FBI agent in Southern California discovered about the CPS even in the 80s? They had public auctions, closed auctions in Las Vegas with the kids on the block. These people.
Well, we have some states now that put the children on the internet, and you can just go through their pictures and choose the one you want.
See how pure evil's just right out in the open now, like it's no big deal.
And then there are some children that even if you might like to, if a really good person who is really trying to help a child would choose that child, oftentimes then they refuse to let these parents have the child.
This is my favorite poster right
So
here
if your
because
motives are pure as the driven snow, and you're trying to really help
people are
that child
saying,
out of the system and give them a new life, oftentimes they won't let
well,
the
he
children
says, help
let
your
the
neighbor
child
and take
go.
care of the poor and help us. But Jesus, can't we just give our money to the Romans, to the federal government, and let them do it for us? And Jesus says, okay, I'm going to start over from the beginning. Let me know where I lost you. In other words, do it locally, okay? We don't need the federal government funding our kids or funding the states to steal our kids.
Because this rivals the Nazis. By the way, the Nazis had CPS. That's how they started grabbing people's kids. The year Hitler was elected in 1933, he was a eugenicist. We'll be right back with the senator. Stay with us. Final segment.
Of Georgia, the United States. And thank you for your gracious invitation.
Honor to be here.
How are you tonight? And thanks to all of you who have made this credible World Congress of Families number 5 in Amsterdam possible. It's a privilege for me to join you tonight and to be with you in some pro-family policy here. I will share with you on the unlimited power of Child Protective Services. I served in the Georgia State Senate, and after 4 years of viewing the ruthless and unsparing actions of Child Protective Services, also called CPS, which I will use tonight, I wrote a scathing report entitled "The Corrupt Business of Child Protective Services." Thank you. The report cost me my Senate seat. Here's some copies of the report, if you'd like to get one. However, there are causes worth losing over, and this is one. I'm going to talk about some of the problems and then some realistic, maybe, solutions for families and children, and maybe look to some steps that we can take. This is not to say that there are not those children in wretched situations who need to be removed. There are, and we all agree. But tonight, I'm talking about those children removed from their homes intentionally for profit. Children are seized unnecessarily from their families due to the federal aid created in 1974 entitled the Adoption and Safe Families Act. It offers financial incentives to the states that increase adoption numbers. To receive the adoption incentives or bonuses, local CPS must have more children. They must have more merchandise to sell. Funding is available when a child is placed in a foster home with strangers or placed in a mental health facility and medicated, usually against the parents' wishes. Parents are victimized by the system that makes a profit for holding children longer and bonuses for not returning children to their parents. This is abuse of power. It is lack of accountability. And it is a growing criminal political phenomenon spreading around the globe. Oftentimes, but not always, poor parents are targeted to lose their children because they do not have the wherewithal to hire an attorney or fight the system. Being poor and lacking proper housing does not mean your children should be removed. CPS has redefined poor to mean psychologically inferior. Therefore, it is in the best interest of the child to be removed. Best interest, of course, has also been redefined at the child's expense. It has been reported over and over that 6 times as many children die in foster care than in the general public. Once a child is legally kidnapped and placed in official safety, the child is far more likely to suffer abuse, including sexual molestation and or rape. Case workers and social workers are often guilty of fraud. They withhold and destroy evidence, and they seek wrongly to terminate parental rights while being protected by state immunity. There is a huge bureaucracy made up of judges, court-appointed attorneys, guardian ad litems, social workers, state employees, court investigators, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, foster parents, adoptive parents, and on, who are looking to the children in state care for their job security. Judges have control over private living arrangements and income of 48.3 million Americans. The United States Census Bureau reported in 2002 that $40 billion in transfer payments were made between households of custody parents and other parents. That money, $40 billion, is under the direction and control of family court judges in environments covered with confidentiality laws that protect the wrong people. Fathers are victims of this unjust system. Child support payments, even without having visits with their children, are choking the very life out of fathers. 3 fathers, of whom I am aware and have been in touch with, committed suicide in the last 12 months because they lost the opportunity to even visit with their children. These are crimes against humanity for financial gain. Rights are removed from parents, human rights, civil rights, and even religious rights. One illustration of what took place in my district is that after so many calls, I decided to call a meeting in one of the counties of my own district. I personally called 37 families that had been in touch with me who had all lost their children, grandchildren. I had them meet me in the library one Saturday morning. We started at 9 o'clock and we ended at 9 o'clock. We had 50 families standing outside the door that could not get in. We didn't have time to talk with them. There was incredible anguish and profound suffering from these families. Some children had been taken off the school bus, taken out of the hospitals, or taken out of their homes in the middle of the night, and even worse. It was just an incredible ordeal. These parents, trapped in the system, become like refugees. They're dazed and glazed and have no one of whom to turn. They do not know what to do, and the loss of their children is devastating. After having worked in this arena for several years, I do not believe that a single child comes out whole after having been in this system. Many foster children make up the homeless population of today. I introduced legislation, Senate Bill 415, in my last session. A substitute bill was written at the last minute by the chairman of the Judicial Committee. All the strong points of my bill had been compromised. I was told, accept it, Senator. At least you will get some legislation passed. And I answered with, obviously, you do not know me. I did not come to the Capitol to get legislation passed. I came to make a difference. What can be done? An independent audit should be called on every state of all Child Protective Services departments. I'm in touch with congressmen and state officials, and the door may be possibly opening very slowly. A federal congressional hearing is needed. But let me add, due to the hundreds upon hundreds of cases that I've been called to consider, I placed calls to state senators, representatives in their respective states across the country, asking them to help me with certain families. And I was told, if I help that family, or if I help you, I will lose my job. Remove, abolish the federal and state financial incentives, and those are taxpayer dollars. those dollars have turned CPS into a business that takes children and separates families for money. Open family court. Remove the confidentiality laws. Give parents their rights verbally and in writing. I even feel that to terminate the rights of parents, the case should be heard before a jury. Family rights and parents' rights must be protected. We do not need more influence like the UN's Convention on the Rights of the Child. It's anti-parent, anti-child, and anti-common sense for the family. There has to be perseverance for any great reform, and great reform is needed in this area. As Charles Spurgeon put it, how do you tame a lion that is well fed? First, he must be brought down. Second, his stomach must be lowered. How do you tame Child Protective Services? It may be only by closing it completely and starting over at the beginning with pro-family values. In closing, let me remind you that there is case law from state appellate and federal district courts and up to the United States Supreme Court, all of which affirm the constitutionality of the rights of parents to actually be parents to their children. There's biblical law too. It goes like this: speak up for those who can't speak for themselves, and for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and the needy. Thank you. On Fox 5, former state senator.
Let's go to Mark in San Jose. Mark, you said you have a breaking story about a young girl that was beaten in the area?
You're killing them, David. You people wrong. Everyone on InfoWars absolutely wrong.
Oh, thank you.
No, thank you. And thank all you people. I'm telling you. But there's this boy, NBC got a right for one. There's somebody decent that works for NBC, Vicki Wynn, here in San Jose. And she was interviewing his mother, who, oh my, her 4-year-old kid was placed into this foster home, right? And they found bite marks all over her body, burn marks, bruises. And she took the pictures, 100 pictures, David. Went to the CPS and the social workers and showed them the pictures, and they basically waved her on and said, get out of here. We don't want to hear about it. I mean, it's incredible. And so I called the tip line, and can I give my last name at NBC? Is it okay if I give my last name?
Well, was that? Yeah, it'd be better if you did. It'd be better if you did, yeah. Just because it might be, just because we can't verify that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, but I did run for city council. I'm fairly well known San Jose.